The views and opinions expressed on any program are those of the producers and/or the persons appearing on the program, and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of FRC Media, Bristol Community College, or the City of Fall River.
Well, good morning, and welcome to Spindle City Straight Talk. I'm Chip.
I'm CJ.
And I'm Carlos Cesar.
Will you stop saying your last name? Everybody knows who you are now. You've been on enough. God, Carlos, come on.
I have to stop hiding myself.
Give the audience a break, will you? Come on. CJ, would you do me a favor before we begin?
No.
Good. You can, would you give out, I had a fan, and a few fans actually asked me, he wanted to buy a Spindle City shirt, T-shirt, or some kind of shirt, and you're the guy in charge of all that stuff. So would you give him the contact information if he wants Spindle City?
Well, and again, what we're going to do, all I can tell you is at this point that we do have an online store set up. We haven't yet, every so often the link appears on our Facebook page, which is Spindle City Straight Talk on Facebook. We will be posting that link, and the online store will be available on our website, which is scstponline.com. And we'll have it all up and available very shortly. We also are going to be sponsoring the Soapbox Derby in the coming days in August during the 50th anniversary of Battleship Cove. So that should also be a very interesting day for everyone to have. And I'm hoping that we have a stock of T-shirts available for the public and for people who wish to buy some. It's been interesting because that request has come up several times, and I know we've actually sold a couple of shirts in our online store. We haven't sold a lot, but I understand you were stalked for those.
Yes, I was. Actually, somebody, I don't know how he spotted me in his rearview mirror, but then he changed lanes and followed me up to. I was taking my dog up actually to BCC for a walk. I walk around the pond, and he actually I thought there was a clandestine mission. Somebody I expected a sniper rifle to come out the window, but instead he actually asked me if we had any Spindle City shirts, and I said, well, I don't really have any in my trunk, but I will get you that information. So that's where we're at with that. But so let's get into the Fall River and what is going on in the city this week. I mean, it's kind of slow because everybody's gearing up for the primary campaign season. So obviously everybody is kind of keeping a low profile. I guess they're preparing their strategies, but the disinformation campaigns are out there already. There have been a few people talking about all the wonderful things in Fall River and all, and listen, don't get me wrong. I love this city. That's why I live here, and that's why I didn't move out. I could have moved out long ago, but I didn't. But to try to continually, every time a report comes out, every time something comes out which shows all the problems we have in Fall River, rather than being realistic, we have this core of people who can, then begin to, all over Facebook, all over the newspaper, they'll say how wonderful Fall River is, and Fall River is great, and I don't understand these reports. Well, the problem is these reports come from all over the nation, from colleges in other states, and they're based on data that is actual data. So, the fact is, if the mayor can depend on data to impose fees, we can use data to actually give a clear and objective picture of our city. And the only way we can fix the city is by looking at the problems and identifying those problems and fixing them, not ignoring them or pretending that they don't exist. How long did we have a gang problem in this city, and the mayors continued to say we had no gangs? It's the same with the drug problem. How much is the drug problem publicized in his community? Very little publicity. So I'm telling all you Kool-Aid pourers out there that try to, dissuade the public from being educated, you're not doing a service to this community. Obviously, this community has some good things about it, but you have to be realistic and pragmatic in order to fix anything. If your legs are 12 inches long, you're probably not going to be a 100-yard dash sprinter. That's the reality. I mean, you have to be objective. You look at our city, and, let's not try to make this city Newton overnight. The average educational level in Newton is a bachelor's degree. The average income is $113,000, the highest income of any city of our size in the Commonwealth. And you look at Fall River, and our household income is between $31,000 and $34,000, depending on where you're looking, and we're the second lowest. So, we can't go from the worst or the second worst to the best. You have to work with your gut first. First, we have to bring people back into this community who will work, who pay taxes, because only 37% of the people in this community own property. And 78% of the people in Newton own property. So the fact is, statistics don't lie. You can manipulate them, but when you want to look at them objectively, it's pretty clear. We've got problems in this city, and our mayor and our city council categorically refuses to admit that any of these things exist. It was kind of refreshing to see Steve Long reading the statistics that I've been basically giving the city council for the last 3 years. But it's nice to know actually one city council actually looked at this and said, wow, we got a serious problem here. So this is where we're at. And I have this book. I'm not going to read it tonight, but if you can get something, it's called Labor's Untold Story. I've read it numerous times in front of the city council. For all you delusionary people who talk about the golden era of Fall River, this is about the real golden era. If you go in there, you'll see that workers from Fall River in the 1800s were called in front of the Senate because of the low wages. Yeah, we did have a time when Fall River had well over 100,000 people, and we had fundamentally full employment. But that's when they chained the kids to the machines, and they were working for about 6 cents an hour. And we had very rich and very poor. And when you look at Fall River today, it hasn't changed much. There's no middle class. We had a middle class for a while, and it's evaporated. So if we don't look at things objectively and we don't work toward changing this, especially this coming September and November, we are in deep doo-doo. So there's my rant for this morning, and let's go.
Chip, it's funny because we've been talking about this for a long time, and I think it's funny because when Steve Long actually spoke about that report, which was generated November 18th, 2014, it said very clearly that we have too much low-income housing. And you have city councilors who I spoke with at length about market rate housing swear by it. There was, oh no, it's going to bring in people who want to live in Fall River. The problem is people don't want to live in Fall River. And I'll tell you why. I watched today the morning news from Channel 25, which I think is, a pretty decent news source. And they were in Framingham. They actually drove through the entire city of Framingham. And I honestly, in that drive-through, and we know it's all edited out a little bit, but they have 3 beaches in Framingham. They're not ocean beaches, they're lakes and ponds. They have a 96-acre park where a hospital used to sit. The only thing that's left there from the hospital is the chapel. Beautiful park, open land, beautiful place to have a picnic, there's a children's part into it. But this is what everything north of 495 does. Why? Because they have people who work. They have a working class. And Framingham is probably one of the many cities that are in the 128 loop and north of 495 that said, hey, get the public housing and ship it to Fall River because we don't want it. Because they don't. Nobody wants it. And we carry the highest percentage of low-income housing available. And people actually are drawn to Fall River. And the sad part about it is that, I went to a building in the Flint, which is going to become a neighborhood association, neighborhood center. And there was tons, I don't want to say tons, I don't want to exaggerate, but there were a bunch of used hypodermic needles in the yard. And they had just cleaned it up. And they came back and they put them all back in the yard again. And this is one of our problems. And then you got the governor saying, oh, we're going to give millions and millions of dollars to attack addiction. You know what? Addiction is not a disease. Diabetes is a disease. Cancer is a disease. Mental illness is a disease. Addiction is a choice. You weren't born with a needle in your arm. You weren't born swallowing Percocet. You chose to do that. That's like people saying alcoholism is a disease. It's not a disease, okay? It's an ism. Do you know what isms are? Isms means inside me. That's a choice you make. I have been a healthcare practitioner for over 26 years, and let me tell you something. They say, nurses can't talk like that. No, I can. I can, and that's the case. We can no longer support addiction. We can no longer support the activities that's going on. I mean, I picked up the paper and I looked at this and I said, 4 arrests for prostitution in Fall River. Where? On Morgan Street. And the neighbors called to complain about it. Well, if the city knows where it is, do something to change the composite of that area. Do something to change the composite of the entire city. When you are the magnet for people who don't work, how are you going to have economic development? There's a lot of people say, oh, we need better housing, we need better this, we need better that. No, we need landlords who won't take Section 8. We need landlords who won't take home base. We need landlords who are going to say, you want a job, you have to work. You don't work, we don't have a place to live here. I'm sorry. And we have to do that. And we have people fighting and having special emergency meetings at the Zoning Board of Appeals so that they can keep their group homeless shelters open. Okay? And my heart goes out to the homeless. I have worked in soup kitchens and food banks, and I do a lot of that. And I do things actually to help them get on their feet, not to just support their homelessness. And that's what the Commonwealth does generally. And we can look at that just alone from our Office of Fall River Economic Disaster, and here's my segue, okay? He has done everything because he's been forced to. He's been forced to. The crazy decisions, I'm quoting, paraphrasing some of the things he said, the crazy decisions he's had to do. And he even turned around and said that once New Bedford had pulled out of the casino race, if Flanagan was still in office, Flanagan would have called him into office right away and say, hey, what can we do to get them to come to Fall River? You know, a $500 million casino cannot be, substantial, cannot sustain itself in Fall River. It can't do it. You can't put a destination decision here, casino here. Look at Foxwoods and Mohegan Sun. They're suffering massive losses, but we're going to put them in Fall River. No, instead they're going to go to Brockton, okay, which is very close to Everett. So they're moving it all the way out there, and there's no way directly to get to the casino. You got to drive through the middle of Brockton. This is going to be a fiasco. But again, Fall River takes the shaft end of the stick.
Yeah, but you gotta realize though that it's almost like, you can say it's a conspiracy theory, but the reality is it's almost like the state wants to keep southeastern Massachusetts just the way it is, because we're the dumping ground. As I said on numerous occasions, it's like in Boston, they say if we ever gave the state an enema, we know that New Bedford would be the left cheek and Fall River would be the right cheek. And that's the reality, because it's almost like they want to keep it. Now Brockton, putting a casino in Brockton's absurd. It's going to be within, less than an hour away from the Boston casino.
And it's actually less than an hour away from Plainfield.
That's right.
So you got right in the middle of two casinos.
And it's absurd. I mean, look at the devastation at Twin Rivers, and just Twin Rivers now that's got table games has wreaked on Foxwoods already. And as far as Kenny Fiola is concerned, Kenny, grow a set. Stop whining like a little baby. Who made you do it? The devil? Did the devil make you do it? To quote Flip Wilson's character there, Geraldine Jones. Yeah, the devil made me do it. You know, come on, Kenny. Nobody makes you do anything. Have some character, have some integrity, have some courage. You are supposed to be working in the best interests of the economic development of Fall River and Greater Fall River. Don't tell me that they made you do it. No, what made you do it is you sucking that 200 grand out and getting 20,000 every quarter from the parking garage and all the money you're making. That's what made you do it. It wasn't Will Flanagan, and it's not going to be Sam Sutter, and it wasn't the mayor before him. You've been here for 20 years. This city still is a mess. We have no economic development, so stop crying and blaming everybody else. They made me do it. They made me do it. Bullshit.
Oh, by the way, Chip, we've got to finally introduce somebody. We haven't had her on camera yet, and she's sitting here in the control room, and she's learning the operations of our studio. And I'd like to bring Nisa on as our new production staff for sure. And it's going to be interesting. And here she is now. So there she is, everybody. She is part of our new production staff, a TV star in and of herself. And she has come to us with some great background. And again, people are dying to get a hold of us, Chip, one way or the other. And I'm not sure if we really want that.
Well, once they say Nisa, they're not going to look at us anymore. So
That's it.
We know why they'll be watching.
Yeah, exactly.
But we just have to welcome her to this mess.
Yes, welcome. And by the way, Nisa is bilingual, and we have.
Oh, we're getting good.
We have. See, now we have trilingual now.
Oh, my
and
God.
and just for the record, we are looking at future programming in Spanish. We have a very, very large and growing Spanish community in the city of Fall River, and no one really has done anything to direct programming to that group, and it's great to have her on board. And she's going to probably get horrified more than once in the next few weeks because she's not used to dealing with Spindle City Straight Talk. But the fact is, it's great to have somebody on board, and she's ready to go.
Don't pass your phone out.
Yeah. But well, Cesar, you haven't waited. But before we do, wait a minute. We got to break one thing, right? We have managed to find one of Sam Sutter's campaign posters. You're going to be, although Cesar put it on Facebook. We wanted to break it, but this is going to be one of his new campaign signs, so don't be surprised before the primary if you see these popping up all over the city. CJ, can we run that?
There he is.
There he is. I want your money. And I think there's another one that says, I want Carlos, but
Hey, he has a couple of hundreds there.
Yeah. So, but come on, Carlos, tell us, have you heard from the mayor or what?
No, I have heard from the mayor, and at this point, I'm just moving on. But just going back to what you were saying in the beginning of the show, I'm usually a very positive person. I like to see the good and run with the good instead of being stuck with the bad. But I like to pick up the bad and turn it into something good. Right now, I have to say that business are closing. People are moving out. Last week, I sit down with a person that's in charge of a very, very good business in Fall River, and he has a very good home, and he pays good tax money. And over the holiday weekend, he said that he was talking to his wife about putting the house for sale and move out of Fall River. And we're hearing this constantly lately. People that actually has participate and pay tax on the city are moving out. It's one point that I want to take. And when somebody says, the business community, that's a very famous phrase. The business community are growing. the business community are hiring. The business community, what business community you're talking about? You know, I mean, the ones that pay you the check must be, because if you walk on Pleasant Street, in 2 years, we lost 18 business. Next month, another business going to close the door on Pleasant Street. They're already selling out everything. So what the hell of business community that you're talking about that's growing that much?
And we have a higher unemployment rate too.
We're almost double the state average in unemployment. But this is the problem. And let me say something, because you know, we've been kind of really laying out some reality here. And let me again, because a lot of people say it's negative. Look, it's not negative. Carlos is a classic example. Neighborhood leader, man who's trying to make the city a better place, a place where people want to come, people that want to participate, wants to get people together. And that's what we need in the community. But what we need is a community that people want to come to. We don't need a community. Look, we've got almost double the unemployment rate. We've got 23.3% of the people living below the poverty level. You know, we have basically no middle class. We have continuing fees and tax raises, and they continue to say, well, you have to tax. Well, Milton Friedman, who I always quote, because what the hell does he know about economics? He only won the Nobel Prize for economics. So, but he said that taxes, you know, all taxes are regressive. They hurt the economy. And we had a time in Fall River where people worked. They weren't the greatest jobs in the world, but they were jobs. And that's when we had restaurants and businesses. And, you know, we don't hate Fall River. I love the people in Fall River. When I got out of the service, I chose to come back to Fall River. I had job offers in Hawaii, California. I came back to my hometown because I missed Coney Island hot dogs and Fall River chow mein and a Cherie sandwich at Billy's. You know, we've got a lot of unique things in Fall River, and we have a lot of good people in Fall River. Mm-hmm. But the fact is that those good people are leaving. A lot of those good people that I saw when I came back from the service, I now see them when I go to Somerset or Swansea or Westport, or I'm at a function and I run into some old friends of mine. I find that the majority of them no longer live in the city. Mm-hmm. As a matter of fact, most of the guys that I began on the fire department with, at the time where virtually everybody lived in the city, I would say 85% live out of the community now. Mm-hmm. So look, we're not saying this to be negative or to be mean or to be whatever you want to characterize it as. It's an objective, pragmatic view of what's wrong with Fall River. And we can't have people doing what you said. We hear that all the businesses, you know, it's booming, we're employing people. No, we're not. No, we're not. We've got almost double the state average in unemployment. We lead in crime and drug use, and that's what we're at the top at. Mm-hmm. We're at the top at being the worst city in the state economically. But if you listen to the politicians, everything's going great. We're going in the right direction. And Kenny just says they're twisting my arm.
And another thing is, just on the waterfront, it's a perfect example. Everybody talks about this new beautiful restaurant, but nobody talks about, because of that beautiful restaurant, another one closed down. Yeah. Right, 100 feet away, a quarter of a mile away. Yeah. They close down. Why? Because it's only a certain number of people that go out. Either they go to this restaurant or that restaurant. This restaurant serves better than that one, or they have more friends coming to this one. The other one's going to go out of business, and that's exactly what happened. But another thing is, what's this? We need to change the system that supports the business at City Hall. Okay, I have a restaurant that's about to close. They don't have the license to run because the owner of the building don't fix the building, and they hold his license. So I approach the City Hall with 2 different locations. One was a restaurant that closes down, and for 3 weeks I'm trying to find out if the city pull up the permits or the license from that restaurant so they can rent that restaurant, or if this other building needs to have sprinkler system to have a restaurant there. And I'm being holding for 3 weeks to hear from the inspectors. 3 weeks to tell me if from the license board if that location lost the license, restaurant license, and another location just to look on the plans and to tell me if that location needs a sprinkler system to open a restaurant there. 3 weeks. So by the time the inspector's going to get back to me with the answers, this business, another business, is going to be out of business. I don't understand.
And you know, Carlos, this is interesting because in New Bedford, they actually have a system in place. 90 days from start to finish of all the permitting and all the startup for a business. 90 days. No, you enter into the mayor's office, you sit down with every department head, you come up with the plan, you come up with everything, boom, all the permitting's done, 90 days.
We need to change the system.
Right,
it's not working.
Fall River won't do it. Fall River won't do it. We had Flanagan who never did it, we had Eddie Lambert who never did it, we had Bob Correa who didn't start it, and we have Sam Sutter who hasn't even tried to start it yet either. And this is the problem, because if you can't get permitted to start your process within 90 days, why do you want to come here? I'll go to New Bedford. Why do I want to come here? I got to wait 90, 120, 180, 240 days to get a permit. It's not worth my time.
But the fact is that, as I said earlier in the show, it's almost like it's done by design. I don't know if anybody can be incompetent this long. And I said I wouldn't read the book, but this is fascinating when you look at it. I'm just going to read an excerpt because it's about a paragraph. On October 18th, 1883, Thomas O'Donnell, a mule spinner in Fall River, testified before the Senate Committee on Labor Capital Relations. And he goes on to talk about how his family and his brother's family lives on $1.50 a day, $150 a year. So after questioning, question and answer, it said, how many people down there in Fall River live on $150 a year? And the answer was, I could not count them, but I suppose there's 1,000. And then the next question was, 1,000 live on $150 a year? And the answer was, they live on less. And isn't it ironic that, was it 2 weeks ago I went before the council, CJ, and stated that 22% of the people in this city of Fall River, their household income is less than $15,000 a year?
Yeah.
And that's over 100 years ago. And it's fundamentally, if you divide it by 100, it's the same thing. They're living on $150 a year in so we haven't changed since 1883. So you clowns who continue to talk about the golden age in Fall River, that was the golden age. People worked in mills for $1.50 a day, and they had children chained to the machines. So let's not try to BS people. Fall River was always a community that had very rich and very poor. And in the interim, it began to develop a middle class. And we've managed, because politically we haven't changed the way we do business, to eliminate that middle class. And the only way we're going to get it back is by changing our government.
Yeah, well, Chip, you're absolutely right. And, we use references a lot here to Germany during the 1930s and 1940s, more specifically to the Third Reich. And, we've been called anti-Semites and Nazis and everything. But you know what? When you look at how the government was set up there, Hitler took a country that was bankrupt, had nothing, and made it a superpower in 3 years. And one of their key fundamental core of their project, of their politicism, was keep them dumb, keep them stupid, and lie to them. Because if you lie enough, they will believe it.
That's what Goebbels said.
That's right. And guess what? This is what we have now. And we're still doing it in Fall River, and it's still happening. But you know what? We're out of time.
Another one.
Another one. Hey, have a great weekend, everybody, and we'll see you on Monday. Thanks for watching.
Very good. Thank you.
Stay angry.